Farhana Sheh. Largest spending plan ever at 332 billion ringgit. Does Budget 2022 live up to its promise to boost Malaysia's post-pandemic recovery? That's coming up. The government unveiled its largest spending plan ever with an allocation of 332.1 billion ringgit for Budget 2022. Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz said the government would continue to provide an expansionary budget considering the needs of every Malaysian.
Tahun hadapan tumpuan kita semestinya adalah untuk memulih semula setiap segmen sosioekonomi negara. Usaha untuk membina daya tahan turut digerakkan bagi mengukuhkan keupayaan perniagaan dan sistem kesihatan dalam mendepani cabaran mendatang.
Of the total, 233.5 billion ringgit would be for operating expenditure, 75.6 billion ringgit for development expenditure, and 23 billion ringgit for the COVID-19 fund. The largest allocation goes to the Education Ministry with 52.6 billion ringgit, while the Health Ministry gets the second largest allocation at 32.4 billion ringgit.
Now, here to discuss the budget with us is Nadia Jalil, Regional Head of Economics and Market Analysis from CIMB. Thank you, Nadia, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Farhana, for inviting me.
So, Nadia, the budget is the largest on record for the country. Do you think it is sufficient to help those badly impacted, like the B40s, SMEs, and those severely affected industries?
Well, in the first place, I think that it's a very good signal that the government has remained committed to a relatively expansionary budget, given that we're not yet out of the danger of the pandemic, especially in terms of a sustainable sort of recovery. Whilst it is very much the largest allocation in history for Malaysia, I think as always the devil is going to be in the details. It's very encouraging, for instance, that the largest allocation goes towards education and the second largest towards health, which then indicates the government's recognition that these are the two areas that are very much the most negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as our measures to contain the spread of the virus. So in that sense, it is possibly sufficient, but we'll have to see what the implementation of these allocations look like.
Okay, so now unemployment is another big issue for Malaysia. Will the initiatives like Jamin Kerja and MyStep help address this, especially since so many Malaysians have lost their jobs due to COVID?
Again, I think the budget provides a very encouraging first step and signal in terms of the government's commitment and recognition of the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the fact that pandemic itself did not just create these gaps in the society, but also actually highlighted the gaps that were existing before. So in terms of unemployment, a measure such as the Jamin Kerja as well as the MyStep programs actually very much are pretty good first steps towards restructuring, I would say, the Malaysia's labour force towards the sort of labour force that we want to see in a post-pandemic world. The question is, however, again, what are the implementation details in terms of where would these jobs be targeted at? Would they be targeted at sectors that are growth areas post-pandemic, in recognition of the fact that there are going to be sectors that are maybe never going to recover to their pre-pandemic structures, such as, you're not going to see mass tourism actually recover to the levels that they had. So there are going to be all these structural changes that need to take place that should accompany the commitment laid out in the budget, as well as the fact that the budget itself is actually the first budget that has been released after the 12th Malaysia Plan. So it all has to fit into one comprehensive development program.
Nadia, if you can move on to the needy, the government has expanded cash aid and social protection measures. But coverage-wise, is it adequate to help Malaysians who are still bearing the brunt of the pandemic?
Well, again, it adds on to all the existing programs and is very much welcomed. But I think I would like to quote research from the World Bank as well as Khazanah Research Institute, in addition to other research institutes like the Centres for I think Ideas, that have underlined the need for Malaysia to actually start forming a more comprehensive social safety net that moves from the cradle to grave, in order for us to meet the challenges that are not just going to, that have not just has been highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic, but also other phenomena such as climate change, for instance, as well as increased digitalization that is going to impact the labor force, especially on the lower value and lower scale labor force. So in essence, yes, a very encouraging first step as is the rest of the budget, but I think this needs to be followed up by more comprehensive plans going forward.
All right, thank you so much, Nadia, for your insights. That was Nadia Jalil from CIMB. Moving on. The government will purchase another 88 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine, enough to provide third doses for all adults in the country, including children aged 12 and above. The initiative falls under Budget 2022's allocation of an additional 4 billion ringgit to fight COVID-19, of which 2 billion ringgit is for vaccination program and another 2 billion ringgit for related health facilities.
One of the aspects in the budget 2022 in this 4 billion would be for the government hospitals to buy services from the private hospitals. We are happy that private hospitals are able to contribute and help the patients in the government so that the waiting period to receive treatment can be shortened.
Tengku Zafrul added that in the next year, the government will seek to provide tax relief for individuals and tax deductions for employers over costs related to self-funded booster doses. It also plans to procure antiviral medicines to fight COVID-19 and other diseases. Among other key takeaways from the budget, the government is extending the reduction of the statutory contribution rates for EPF until June 2022.
To help ease cash flow of Malaysians impacted by lockdowns, EPF has agreed for the contribution rates to stay at 9%. This, according to Tengku Zafrul, will provide 2 billion ringgit to the people. 600,000 new job opportunities will be created under the Jamin Kerja initiative. Employers who recruit those who are not actively working with a monthly salary of 1,500 ringgit and above will enjoy 20% and 30% in salary incentives. The government will expand the sugar tax. Excise duty will be imposed on malt, cocoa and chocolate beverages in order to compel Malaysians towards a healthier lifestyle. The government also plans to impose excise duty on liquid or gel products containing nicotine used for e-cigarettes and vapes. Sales tax exemption for passenger vehicles assembled in Malaysia will be extended till June next year. Imported vehicles will also be given a 50% discount in sales tax. To spur the property segment, there will be no real property gains tax or RPGT for properties sold after the 6th year. The government will impose a one-off special tax for high-income companies earning 100 million ringgit and more to increase funds for those affected by COVID-19. The tax will be 24% for the first 100 million ringgit and 33% for the rest above that. In a bid to empower women, all public listed companies will have to appoint at least one female board member by September next year. The government has also set aside 2 billion ringgit for employment of housewives, single mothers and unemployed women.
Continuing our discussion, does Budget 2022 live up to its promise of priming the economy for post-pandemic recovery? Tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests if Budget 2022 meet expectations. That's coming up after this. We'll take a short break. Stay with us.
Ayuh keluarga Malaysia, kita bulatkan tekad dan bersatu hati untuk terus memelihara serta mempertahankan kedaulatan negara. Sebagai keluarga Malaysia yang besar, kita harus bertoleransi dalam semua perkara. Hormat menghormati serta mengekalkan perpaduan rakyat yang berbilang kaum, agama dan bangsa serta integrasi nasional silang budaya adalah tunjang kekuatan kita sebagai sebuah negara bangsa yang berjaya. Umpama selembar benang dikait, ditenun dan dijalin, akhirnya menjadi kain yang sempurna indah.
Welcome back. Pakatan Harapan component parties have unanimously agreed to contest in the upcoming Melaka state election under the coalition's logo. According to opposition leader Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim, of the 28 seats, PKR would field candidates in 11 seats, Parti Amanah Negara 9 and DAP 8.
Seluruh kekuatan PH, DAP Amanah dan Keadilan akan hanya menonjolkan logo Pakatan Harapan. Jadi kita berjuang atas satu logo, satu pendirian dan satu manifesto bagi peringkat negeri.
While the Melaka election will only see state seats being contested, Anwar said Pakatan has also decided on the seat allocation for parliamentary constituencies in the future, with PKR and Amanah contesting 2 each, while DAP gets 3.
Malaysia will be procuring the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine to inoculate children aged 5 to 12 years old. This is following the US Food and Drug Administration's panel decision in recommending the Pfizer vaccine for children this week.
Health Minister Khairy Jamaluddin said the ministry will also be looking at other vaccine options like from Sinovac. 62% of adolescents in Malaysia have been fully vaccinated, while 82.4% are partially vaccinated. Khairy also announced that new information on COVID-19 booster shots for recipients of the AstraZeneca vaccine will be released soon. He added that people with allergies and cannot take the mRNA vaccines may be offered Sinovac or AstraZeneca for their booster. Khairy, a 2-dose Sinovac recipient, tweeted a video of him receiving the Pfizer booster jab to assure the public that heterologous vaccinations, where different types of vaccines are administered to the same recipient, are safe.
South Korea will begin easing COVID restrictions starting November 1st as it tries to live with the virus. The move came after the country met its goal of vaccinating 70% of its 52 million people last week. Officials said the first phase would last for a month, with plans for all restrictions to be scrapped by February. Beginning Monday, the country will remove operating hour curbs on restaurants and implement its first vaccine passport for high-risk venues such as gyms, saunas and bars. Authorities have said they will focus on hospitalization and mortality rates and expand self-treatment for those with only mild COVID-19 symptoms. Thousands of tourists trapped in a small border city in North China were sent to undergo quarantine following an outbreak of COVID cases. In the city of Lanzhou, bordering Inner Mongolia, millions of people have been largely confined to their homes over the past week after cases were detected there. Authorities have barred people from leaving the city on Monday after 2 tourists tested positive. More than 9,000 travellers were stranded in the city and nearly a half were aged above 60. Local government started transferring 2,000 of them to low-risk cities nearby, where they will go through another 14-day quarantine. An American woman convicted for helping to kill her mother in Bali has been released from jail early. Heather Mack was sentenced to 10 years in jail after she was found guilty for assisting her boyfriend in the murder at the luxury resort in 2014. In this high-profile case, Tommy Schaefer beat socialite Sheila von Wiesmack to death with a fruit bowl following a heated argument at the hotel. The incident was dubbed the suitcase murder as the dead body was stuffed in a suitcase. The couple were arrested a day later after they were found at a hotel about 10 kilometers from the resort. Mack was subsequently sentenced to 10 years in jail but was released early Friday on good behavior. She is now awaiting deportation to the US. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news update on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and the Astro AWANI app. I am Fahana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.
Astro dan broadband, gabungan terpadu.